evening, ladies, and well, it's not evening yet, unless you're on the East Coast. Right now, it's well, not even on the East Coast. It's still afternoon. I am so far behind today. Uh, so welcome to the TATM podcast. That's the Anarchist Transmission podcast. Um, we've got a few topics today. The first on the list being high demand religions and cults and their effects on public policy and platform and politics. We'll just go ahead and introduce each topic as we go along. So before we get started today, I want to go ahead and introduce our co-hosts. Uh, Obviously, we're going to start with Liz. Please say hello, Liz.
Hello, I'm Liz, and I don't really have much else to say about myself today, if that's okay.
No, that's absolutely fine. And then we are going to go to Natalia. Please say hello, Natalia.
Hi.
And then, of course, my Marine sister from the East Coast. Fuck the East Coast. Haley, please say hello.
Hi. Fuck the West Coast. East Coast rules.
Whoa. West Coast.
I know that this is just gonna start a war at some point, even though we are absolutely cool with each other. Marines will war with anyone.
we gotta take our jabs when we can get them in, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we have yeah, we have our topic that we're going to start with: high demand religions or cults and their effects on political public policies and platforms. Before we get into the politics of it all, how about we hear from the co-hosts? What do you guys see as a cult or uh, a high demand religion?
I know there's a textbook definition, but I always think that something is in culty territory when the members give up their thinking to other people.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of putting it. Give me a second here. Does anyone else have any ideas?
I would say something kind of along the same lines, but a little bit further, like when you're you're so um indoctrinated into certain ideas and concepts that you're unwilling to um like consider other sources of information, like you're willing to overlook other facts because they do not align with the concepts and ideas you've been indoctrinated with.
Mm-hmm. So being within a cult or a high demand religion, which are technically cults, like the Church of Latter Day Saints of Jesus Christ or Jehovah's Witnesses, these groups are high demand religions and also fall under the category of cult. Um, but the way in which these religions operate or these cults operate is kind of how Liz explained it earlier. You basically give up your thought process to the group. The group makes how you feel about and think about things. Um, how you think and feel about things for you. Like they make those decisions for you. Um, Okay, and we just had someone else join. Tori, please say hello. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I was just telling her that I don't know that her volume's working because she's lighting up, but I can't hear her.
Tori, that's me. Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Okay. Give me
Hello,
one
can you hear me?
second. Yep. I just need 1 second so I can adjust your volume here. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Tori. Oh. Oh, she dropped out.
She's probably trying to fix the audio.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Let's go ahead and jump back here. So I've noticed over the past several years, probably especially the past 4 years, that there is cult thought everywhere. Gender criticals, they're a cult. TERFs, they're a cult. People that have joined MAGA, they're a cult. People, um, there are people on the left that have joined fucking cults. They don't have to be religious in nature. They just have to be cult like in thought.
I agree. Although I am curious what you think the difference between TERFs and gender criticals are, because you know that meme where they're like corporate says they're the same image? That's legit how I feel.
Yeah, so
Just the same.
gender criticals often include trans people in the description, whereas TERFs have a solid you don't get to exist in our space regardless of if we're talking about you or not.
Oh, okay. I only experienced these groups fighting with them as a cis woman. And so when I interact with them, they both just seem the same exact type of awful. And I didn't know that one group wouldn't even let you speak to them.
Well, they'll let you speak to them, but if it's their space, they don't want you in it. And that's any space to include. Hi, Tori.
Hi, Tori.
Um,
Uh,
We heard you.
so sorry about that.
no,
So sorry about that.
it's absolutely fine, Tori. Um,
Can you still hear me?
yes, but you're in and out.
Oh no.
So when it comes to perfs, if they have a space that they've demarcated, it doesn't even have to be like bathrooms or sports or anything of the kind. If they've just demarcated a line to keep quote men out, they won't allow you anywhere near there.
I am going to file that away in my head because, like I said, I'm not getting the same interactions with them. Although I've also never tried to join any of their spaces since I hate them.
Yes, and of course, then we have gender criticals, aka GCs, and these people, when they create a space and they interact with trans people, they'll turn trans people into useful idiots for them. For instance, Blair White has been a useful instrument or useful idiot for, say, gays against groomers, in which that entire movement is a GC movement, not a TERF movement, but a GC movement.
Reminder is actually run by cishet
by a
people.
lesbian.
No, wait, which one was it that was like run by cishet people? That were just like a psyop.
I
Oh, that's the
don't.
one that's gays against trans people. Hold on a second.
No, wait, we're
I
talking
know.
about that one.
No. There's a. I know the group you're talking about. I'm just trying to think of their name because I think we're talking about a different group.
I mean,
Well,
they kind of have like similar rhetoric, I'd say.
Yeah,
gays
they're all like different flavors of the same ice cream.
gays against groomers is a group started by a lesbian, and I don't remember her name. I think it's Michelle. But this woman has gone on a tirade, basically labeling all trans people as groomers and using other trans people as her useful idiots in order to perpetuate the stereotype.
Are we sure she's not a Republican?
She may be, but I doubt it.
I think what's like interesting is that this isn't even like new rhetoric, it's just what the Nazis used.
Yeah, it is pretty much the exact same rhetoric that the Nazis used.
Yeah, and nobody seems to have an issue with that apparently, because I know calling a Nazi rhetoric is apparently not something people care about usually.
Well, and
Every
Nazi rhetoric. I was talking to my neighbor woman about the shooter in Wisconsin and how they thought she was associated with turf stuff, and I straight up said, I said that's just Nazi rhetoric anyway, so it's not surprising that she's in that group. And they looked at me like they didn't know.
every single day I wake up and I wonder like how we have failed so badly at like learning from history, because so much of everything that we're seeing today mirrors, you know, pre-World War II Nazi Germany or the French Revolution. Like it's like people just won't learn, and it blows my
I have a
mind.
theory.
Intentional. The way
I-
that we teach history to children is intentionally made to make them not as interested in history or engage with it in a
Yeah,
way
but it's not
that
even
would result in
that.
critical thought. Sorry.
Like the way history told in most places is inherently nationalist. It doesn't actually care about facts. It just cares about glorifying whatever nation you're in. So they're obviously not going to actually be like anti-Nazi on principle. They're going to be anti-Nazi on the, oh, we fought them. If you did fight them, or they're just going to have like, this is our participation in World War II. If it was against the Nazis, it would obviously be anti-Nazi, but it's not going to be like, oh yeah, they're just bad people. Here's how to actually like spot the rhetoric. No, it's going to be, oh yeah, they're bad people, but they never actually tell you how it got to, the point where the public accepted stuff like the Holocaust or general genocide.
I think
So-
you're also correct that it's not being taught fully enough like that too. Like the idea that the Nazi party was made up of regular people and not like super duper Jew haters is something that just seems to skip a lot of people by.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, because
Very true.
Go ahead.
absolutely because like the Nazi party only really lost this much influence when they start to lose the war. Because people still supported them because people were indoctrinated, right? But you don't want to actually admit that because nobody wants to admit they'd be the person who could actually report the Jew.
So, an interesting story about that is that I work with a guy whose grandfather served on a submarine during the war, but he did not serve in the US Navy. He served in the Nazi Navy. His grandfather was vehemently opposed to the war and the rhetoric of the Nazi Party, but because he had been part of the German Navy before the Nazi Party took over, when he tried to leave, they threatened him and his wife, and he didn't have the gall to leave until after they lost the war. Just before his ship was struck by one of ours during a skirmish below sea level. The submarine had been surfaced, and he had jumped overboard and been taken aboard by the naval vessel that sunk his ship. And he sought asylum
Wow.
here in the U.S.
The beginning part of that story reminds me of The Sound of Music.
Uh-huh. That's because that was,
That
I
is
think,
an
the
insane
Polish
story.
Navy?
Austria, I believe.
Austria. Yeah, Austrian Navy,
By the way,
and yes.
I don't want to like clear out that like the point I'm making is that a lot of people aren't comfortable with admitting that they also have, certain biases that the Nazis would also exploit in them.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
think
that's like,
that's
I can,
also why we don't like to teach that it was normal people, because then you'd have to admit that inside of yourself is somebody who could
yeah,
become a fucking Nazi.
yeah. Even if they exploit you, you still have to actually deconstruct why you believe those. You would actually get to that point.
A really good
Go ahead.
A really good book on this topic is They Thought They Were Free. It talks about like the individual German citizens like descent into Nazism. It was written by I have the book. I can give the author's name later on. I'll have to dig it up, but it was written by a Jewish journalist in the 1950s. So he was there like directly talking to the citizens and stuff. It's a pretty enlightening read.
The interesting part about indoctrination is it can be broken pretty easily when faced with your own biases. So I said last time I was a Jehovah's Witness growing up, I had all of the same biases that you generally expect extremely religious people to have. I was anti-gay. Uh, Trans people didn't really exist in the open back then, and you know, I knew that there were things that were wrong with me that didn't mesh with the religion, and so I just kept trudging along trying to fall in line. But at
Wow.
one point while I was in the Marine Corps, I was faced with a psychologist who said, "Listen, you've been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. What the fuck are you doing here?" And that started my entire journey down the rabbit hole into transition. I still put it off for years. I didn't want to admit it to anyone, but when you grow up in a cult, especially, there is a lot of damage. Um so when we talk about cult thought and indoctrination into cult thought, you don't have to have any specific leader. There doesn't have to be a leader. There just has to be a group and some sort of consensus in the group.
Yeah, isn't
And
that the difference between the code of personality as well?
yes, so most religious cults are cults of personality, whereas other cults like GCs or TERFs, where there's no actual leaders, those are just cults. Uh, yes, Tori. What is your question?
I was wondering, at what point can we label any of the Abrahamic faiths a cult?
I label them all cults. Sorry,
Thank you.
Christians.
Well,
I was raised in your little cult.
there
Same.
each religion has a
I am.
Abrahamic and a Mosaic history, and most of them are Mosaic as of recently, but there are a few religions that border both.
Well, the Abrahamic faiths are just the Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, which are the ones that control most of the world. Most of the other
Yes.
religions, as far as like if you get into Buddhism or Hindu, those actually are logical religions because they actually more make sense. For instance, like there's never just
We're
one
not
of
calling
anything.
Hinduism logical.
Every what's that?
Like, I'll agree with you about Buddhism being logical, but you can't call Hinduism logical. I know too much about it. It's
say
not
more
very
so
logical. It's cool though. I mean, like the myths
as
are
far
cool, but they're
as
fantastical.
how they have yeah, right. My point is just the multiple deities, just the fact that almost every other religion taps into the spiritual, and they actually have dozens, if not hundreds, of deities. Even every native and indigenous tribes and cultures will have dozens and hundreds of deities. Then all of a sudden, Christianity comes in and says, "Oh no, no, there's only one God. All you guys are wrong. It's just us." Oh, and plus, it's written in this book that only we are allowed to read and write. And if you are
We lost you
if
for a
you
bit of that. I think
get
you've got a bad connection
caught,
again.
you will be
Yeah.
punished.
That's a bad connection that you've got there, Tori.
And God forbid if you're a woman who gets caught reading.
I think
Does that make any sense?
so.
Okay.
The part that I heard actually, like, you convinced me. You called Hinduism logical, and I was like, no, it's not. And then when you explained your theory about monotheism versus polytheism, I actually think you made a really good point that. Oh, sorry. Oops.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to actually comment if possible.
Yeah.
So I'm
So I think it's like really interesting.
Yes,
that,
like every other religion who's been around longer than any of the Abraham. Hello.
yeah. So we're going to put Tori on a server mute for a little bit. Try to see if she can get a better connection later. We'll absolutely talk about that. Natalia, go ahead and say what you were saying.
okay, I find like really it's somewhat interesting that when it comes to Abrahamic religions, you, like for Christianity, which is like the only somewhat quote unquote progressive one, they've had to strip like so much of the core of the religion out to even like make it somewhat palatable to modern society. And even still, it's like so conservative. When you actually compare it to society itself, it's definitely interesting because it kind of just shows that these religions have conservatism built into them. And the more time goes on, you either have to like strip more and more of the core until it's like no longer even what it was, or you have to just completely get rid of it in order to actually progress.
Yeah.
I don't know if
So
I'm making sense.
so when it comes to Abrahamic versus Mosaic, so all three of the major religions, Christianity, uh, Islam, and Judaism, all three of them went through Mosaic transformations, especially in the 18 and 1900s. I mean, you look at Iran back in the 60s, and there were women out on the beach in bikinis. Islam in that area reverted back to
Yeah, but
an Abrahamic religion.
yeah, but that's like the thing. Abrahamic religions, if you ask me, are like inherently conservative.
Yes, they are.
And
I
that's my
but
point.
like,
Sorry if I'm not making sense.
no, you're
no,
absolutely fine. Liz?
I am debating if I should go off on the rant I'm about to before
Have
I
at it.
start it. So, my biggest problem with the patriarchal Abrahamic religions is the way that they seem designed to take the importance, the mutual importance that both genders are supposed to have in our species, and instead imbue all of the qualities of creation onto a male figure and uses an excuse, therefore, that women are not as equal to men as they could be. And that inherent flaw in them, I feel like, leads to so many of the problems. But I find Christianity to be, like, as a woman, kind of the most offensive because it gives the power of forgiveness to Jesus in the way that it's taught to a lot of people. And when Jesus forgives you for anything, you don't have to ask the people that you harm for forgiveness and you're still saved. You're kind of like setting up a religion to create abusers.
Yes. Absolutely.
I,
Yo, I have been saying kind of the beginning of what you just said for like I've been screaming it from the heavens for a month now. Freaking you want to tell me like religion wants to tell me that the creator of like all life in the universe is a man? That's what you want me to believe? Isn't that like their whole idea of like a woman's purpose? And you want me to believe that the real one, the one who really started it all, was a man, and not only that, but then he created people, and he created man in his image, and
I
and
see.
then gave the gave the life creation part to women. It just doesn't logically make sense.
I don't want
I see
to.
their religions as like the first cult of man, like religion, where they're like, all right, ladies, well, actually, a man created us. So guess what? And also, it's your fault that we don't
Okay.
live in paradise.
Also, what I find interesting is that, like, I mean, a lot of religious people which are like, oh no, I don't hate women, but I just think they shouldn't have rights because, and they're just be like, oh yeah, men and women are like equally important, but for different reasons. They're like, no, please just say you hate us at this point. Because I'll be real, I just like prefer someone actually admitting they hate a group than just trying to like be fake about it. If that makes any sense.
It
Um,
does. Okay, so bitchy woman. Um, I'm so
Tori.
sorry. What was her name? Tori. Uh, wrote out, ultimately, every religion, indigenous, spiritual, that are older than Christianity have dozens of, not hundred, or if not hundreds of deities, but then white men come in and say, nope, you're all wrong. There's only one God, and it's our God, and it's in this book that only we are allowed to read. And if you get caught reading it, you'll be punished. And that God is a man, and in fact, women have no rights, and God forbid that you are a woman that gets caught reading. Point is,
The
there is never just one of anything, even God's, which is the red flag in itself. And yes, honey, you are so right. Like
the
I
the
said, patriarchal power grab.
the hilarious thing about these religions, especially Islam and Christianity, is the only truly monotheistic religion on the face of the planet is Judaism. Both Christianity and Islam were influenced by polytheistic religions in the area. They eventually merged. Um, so Christianity merged with Roman paganism. I do not remember which polytheistic religion Islam merged with, but I know for a matter of fact that it did. Um, so specifically when you talk about Christianity and everyone celebrates Christmas, Christmas isn't the birthday of Jesus. Christmas is the celebration of the summer or the winter solstice. the rebirth of the sun.
The the traditions in the area where the Muslim religion comes from that are probably like the most famous that I know of are like jinns,
Mhm.
and other mythological creatures that are like awe-inspiring and difficult to deal with, and they speak of a great depth of like culture that was there before the monotheism. And sometimes if you meet somebody from like I had a friend from Yemen who would tell me some of the stories on our breaks, and they're pretty cool if you ever know somebody who knows them.
I think I had brought it up last time that uh, when it came to Christianity, um, the person in line to be the leader of Christ's church after he was killed was supposed to be his fucking wife.
In the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha's wife went on to be his first leader and like her own side of the religion, which is like how it seems like Christianity probably should have gone to.
So I have a couple comments from Stoner. First off, he said hello to everyone on the stream. And then second, he said cults of personality, Joseph Stalin, Joseph Smith, Warren Jeffs, David Koresh, and um, Warren Jeffs, I believe, is an FLDS leader who uh, which basically means that Joseph Smith and Warren Jeffs were both in the same religion or same cult. They were both leaders in the same cult because modern LDS is not the same cult that Joseph Smith left behind.
Cults have to change because the leader changes and no two people are alike, and they get so much of their flavor from their current leaders until it like I think that cults like harden into religions after they've been publicly accepted for long enough. And then we're like, that's not a cult, it's a religion. Like Mormons.
Scientology, anyone?
Yeah. Oh, one time I was talking shit about Scientology, and my mom, a God fearing woman of the Christian faith, told me that I had to be tolerant of other religions. And I said, that's not a religion, it's a cult. And she said, honey, that's not nice.
It's a cult based on a fucking sci-fi novel.
A
It's
science
the most
fiction
It is?
ridiculous
author
shit.
wrote the cult. It's so stupid. And not only that, a science fiction author reported to have been in a bet with another science fiction author previously about making money via a cult. So
But okay, like the only thing I know about Scientology is just they just like charge you so much for seminars or something. It has like a leveling up system. I did not know it was based on a sci-fi novel.
okay, so
Yeah,
I
I'm
need
pretty
you to look up the Behind the Bastards episode about Ron L. Hubbard. Listen to the entire thing and then come back and talk to me.
Okay, sorry.
No, you know, no. That's a good thing. Like you're gonna want to talk to me about it because it's so interesting. This guy is a fascinating character. He basically was like, I'm gonna create a cult. He was a sci-fi writer, and then he did. And then at some point he was wanted by the US government. So he got on a boat and he was living like a libertarian boat life out at sea. Just fascinating stuff from the beginning of his life until the day he dies. He is nothing but interesting. Also, not a person I would want to personally know.
Yeah, same here. Doesn't sound like a person I'd want to know.
Let's take a look here.
But that was me enthusiastically recommending media, not like talking down to you. I love that
behind,
podcast, like
Okay.
specifically the one
behind
on
the
Ron L.
bas-
Hubbard.
Okay, because I
yeah,
kind of just
Behind
like
the
look it up.
Bastards is just a great podcast.
No, I think I'm losing my voice too. In fact, I think I might be coming down with something because in between when we started this podcast, I like did some basic laundry and I was out of breath. So like everyone else is sick. It's likely.
I just about to say, I thought you were saying it as like, oh, listen to it first and then comment on the issue.
No, no, I really wanted to share it with you, and I came off the wrong way because, like I said, like my voice is kind of going in the back. So the excited higher pitch note that would have indicated that I was just excited isn't in my voice right now.
Okay, that's fair. I'll listen to it or I'll watch it or whatever if I
Oh,
don't forget.
please, please, please do talk to me about it though if you do. Like I am always down for a shit talking conversation about Ronald Hubbard. I've been obsessed with him since the early days of the internet when people started leaking Scientology's actual like all of their stuff online. The best reading I had when I was like, 17, 18 years old was all of the Scientology shit that you had to go through the stages of their cult in order to be able to read normally. But because the internet existed, these people had
What?
just like uploaded it all. Yeah, this is like one of the first big like internet dramas, I guess.
Wait, okay,
Erica, do
okay.
you remember it?
You need to go up there to be able to read.
Oh yeah. Oh, so okay. So when you before the internet, how Scientology worked was they would have these like little storefronts on the side, and they'd be like, "Come on in and like have a personality test," and then they would tell you that your personality was having issues because there were things going on in your life, but they could help you balance it, and they would like do these like self help things. They also ran like a lot of like Alcoholics Anonymous adjacent groups, like Narcanon, I think might have been them. I can't remember. And so they would they would get people who were like at the worst moment of their lives, and then they would be like, all right, well, the way to fix your problems is to do this. And then as you went up the tiers in the cult, then they would reveal that actually the real thing was that there was this alien that was inhabiting your body and you had like negative theons or something. I can't remember the whole thing, but if they had told you this from the start, you wouldn't get involved in it, which I think is why
Yeah,
they like
fair.
pace out the crazy sci-fi shit.
Okay, no, just I thought you meant if you joined their code, they wouldn't allow you to read until you got to like a certain point.
Oh, no, you just couldn't, like, read about, like, the Thetans or whatever, the alien ghost. That's a good way to put them.
Okay.
Um. So
Sorry, Erica, that's I didn't you didn't know that I was
no, you're
a hidden Scientology nerd.
you're absolutely fine. So obviously, we're dealing with reversions into Abrahamic religions or into the Abrahamic versions of these religions that had already made the transition into Mosaic belief systems. Christianity had become Mosaic, so had Islam, and that's how there was this major push into the belief that women are equal, they get to make equal decisions about their own fucking lives. It took fucking forever for these religions to transition into Mosaic religions, but boy, do they transition back really stinking fast.
When I went to church in the 1990s, our pastor was a pretty good guy, and we had a youth pastor that was like the best way to describe him was when I was 12, I realized that I didn't believe in God. And I just like, I used to spend my lunch reading mythology in the cafeteria, and I read the Bible front to back, and I was like, this is like the other shit that I read. And I didn't think that that was any reason to base my life around it, and the pastor was like, "Fine, still come to church." And so I stayed in youth group anyway because he didn't want to separate me from my friends. And I had such a positive impression of Christianity back then. And as I grew up, something changed. The well has been poisoned.
Yes, it has. Um, so a lot of it is people losing power, especially the Christian religion losing power within the government. Um, Especially since the decision of separation of church and state came about. Um, but you're never going to have a truly separate church and state when it comes to the U.S. government, because so much of the U.S. Constitution, or the belief systems that created the Constitution, were created around a transitioning religion, or a transitioning Abrahamic religion into a Mosaic religion. It was right at the start that it was finally making that transition into a Mosaic religion. Some of the thought processes that came from Christianity that went into the Bill of Rights, and especially the Bill of Rights, the idea of innocent until proven guilty. That's based on Blackstone's formulation, which is based on the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot. I think it was Lot. No, it wasn't Lot. Who was it that was supposed to go into Sodom and Gomorrah in order to try to find one person who hadn't been corrupted? Can't remember the name of that person, but
Oh
God spoke.
no, I don't either. And I remember all the details of the Lot story.
Yeah, God spoke to this person. Said, if there is just one person with a good heart left in that city, I will spare everyone's life. That's what Blackstone's formulation is based on. Blackstone's formulation is, it's better that 10 guilty people go 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person suffer. And that comes out in due process of innocent until proven guilty.
You're never gonna believe who the dude was.
Who?
Abraham.
Okay.
I mean, like, obviously you'll believe that it was Abraham, but like, it's just funny that we couldn't remember it, and we've been calling them the Abrahamic religions.
I would like to correct something, especially for Stoner, considering that he has in the past been a participant in this podcast. He is not blackballed. No one from my server is blackballed. We are simply hosting this podcast on this server for the time being, for the foreseeable future. People are not banned from my podcast right now.
I
just
can set it
just
up
wanna
so that men can just be in one voice chat if
Oh.
they're men that that are like given a specific role.
No, it's absolutely fine. When it comes time to take my podcast back to my server, what I would like to do is maybe, every other week have the server hosted here, and then have the stream hosted here, and have the stream hosted on my server.
Oh, that's great because some of the ladies were talking about wanting to also do a podcast that's the servers. So
Mm-hmm.
that could be a great way to launch us both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can teach someone in here how to get the podcast set up, builds the layouts.
I should have said uplift us both. Sorry, I misspoke.
Absolutely.
Because a launch is something you do once. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. Well,
Nitpicking my own language now.
so when it comes to public policy, we had started that transition into a Mosaic belief system around 1775, when the founding fathers had started to, actually take John Locke's philosophy and putting it into use. And then, of course, we move further into the history of the US, and people become more free you gotta fucking fight for it. You've got the Civil War, you've got women's suffrage, all of that. And then, women finally start gaining some sort of traction in the workplace and in society. And here comes 2012 and 2016, and people are beating the ever living shit out of these women in position. Not like physically, but one of those get back in the box. And while I agree that was a good thing to do with Hillary, it doesn't have to be done to all women.
I don't want to actually say though. You can give us as many rights as you want, but that isn't actually going to solve social issues. Because you can look at it this way. There are places which gave women rights, right? They gave them
Mhm.
equality in the workplace. They gave us, mostly legal equality. And there's still many social issues. So you have to actually reform society as well.
Agree. It's not,
I think a
you know,
lot of
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
When you moderate a subreddit, and I've moderated subreddits with like over 1 million people in them, and I'm not saying that it's the same as like a country, but it's a lot of people talking to you at once. And you don't just change a rule. You have to work with the subreddit and let them know that it's the rule, and preferably have them be the ones that chose the rule. And then people obey the rule. If you just change the rules on them and start enforcing it, you get angry mod mails and people don't want to cooperate, and there's fights. And sometimes people even spin off a subreddit called True, whatever your sub name was.
Drew off my chest.
Uh, a
My
fine
point
Reddit
is,
tradition when you don't like leadership.
but my point is more that I think what you're describing is that legal progress did happen, but it didn't actually line up with the necessary social progress.
I think it's a lot of different, like, everything's all interconnected, and I don't think many people like look at it that way. Like, if we're talking about we want social progress, you get social progress by educating your population
Mhm.
and by making sure that everyone, has the basis of knowledge needed to be able to understand these really complex topics, because that's the reality of it, really. Like, these some of these topics are just too complex for people who are undereducated to really understand the nuance of. And so then it becomes, well, you've got this social issue, but in order to solve the social issue, you have to look at education reform. But that makes you think about, then you're looking at work reform for like teacher pay and, you know, federal government with the Department of Education. Like, it's all so interconnected that it's almost like, where do we start? And like, you can't, it would be very difficult to attack everything at once, but how do you know which problem is the one that you need to start with in order to get all of them solved? Because they kind of are so interconnected that they all need to be solved at once.
Yeah, and we
I mean,
we were on the correct path for a good period of time. I'm talking the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. We talked last week about educational programs that we had in schools. Drunk driving educational campaigns, uh, smoking campaigns, teach kids, don't do this. And the laws had obviously not ever done shit. It was only because of education that we ever made any sort of social progress. And it looks like I'm going to have to tell the story again. Not on stream. It's not going to happen on stream. I will never let it happen on stream.
When you tell that story, when you're done, remind me to tell you about the traffic cones because I don't think I've told you that story over voice chat, and it is kind of funny.
No, no. So I will tell that story, and I will tell another one of Haley's choosing. She gets to pick today. Okay, so simple fact of the matter is the U.S. is screwed, not just because of all of these religions that have converted back to an Abrahamic belief system, but more so because everyone is stuck in cult thought, or so many people are stuck in cult thought. It's really fucking dismaying. And I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, but now we've got new co-hosts, and it's just something that I absolutely love to bring up in all of this. Stoner says, "Hammer, don't cross the streams." We are not doing Ghostbusters references. I'm not doing it.
I think none of us are either. I'm tempted though. I really do like the original Ghostbusters.
So do I. And it's on the server in case anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah, I might watch it with the kid later. Good suggestion.
So that being said, we've got so many cult thought groups. We got GCs, TERFs. Unfortunately, there was a chapter of Antifa in the U.S. that absolutely went off the fucking rails. MAGA is a cult. I have a hard time seeing anyone in any sort of hardcore political belief system not being in a cult.
I've definitely noticed that there is a difference in how people participate in politics. Like they participate in it the way that you participate in a sport that you like.
Mm-hmm.
My daddy liked the Eagles, so go Birds. And there's not a lot of critical thought, and there's a lot of inheritance of the ideas without formation of an individual self. And it kind of makes me feel like perhaps some of the more fulfilling aspects of life are not happening to some of these people.
My start down the
Um,
contrarian path. Oh, go ahead, Natalie or Natalia.
okay, that's just like what ecocampism, and I just hate it. I mean, I can go on like for hours about why I hate it, but I'll just say that it's just very reductionist in how things actually work. Because if you're just looking at it as like two sides that you have to necessarily choose from, you're always going to actually reduce the issue to something very simplified that you cannot actually analyze.
When it comes to cult thought, I have always been contrarian. I've always done what I can to disagree, playfully at least, with my parents. So growing up, my parents loved the Green Bay Packers, and my brother loved the Vikings because Iowa doesn't have any professional sports teams. We've got college teams, but no pros. And when it came down to it, even though I dislike football, I chose the Cowboys just to piss off my parents.
Beautiful.
I actually did something like that too. I'm from the Boston area, and we're big on the Red Sox, obviously. The Red Sox very famously have enemies in the New York Yankees. And I had a friend growing up that had moved from New York, so she was a big Yankees fan. And I was joking with her one day when we were like maybe 7th or 8th grade, and I was like, yo, the Yankees suck this year. You should consider rooting for a different team that doesn't suck so bad. And she was trying to explain to me, oh, it's like a loyalty thing, like this is where I'm from or whatever, and you'd feel the same way about the Red Sox. And I said, bullshit, I would. And I was like, what's the most random team that I can support other than the Red Sox?
The
And
Cubs.
I asked, well, I actually forget which team it was recommended to me. I asked like my friend's dad. I think it was like I'm I might be showing my lack of sports knowledge because I really actually don't follow sports at all, but I think it might have been like the Astros or something like that that was recommended to me, and that's what I did. I just went fucking hard for them that one season because I was like I was like I'm not going to just automatically follow the Red Sox just cuz I'm from Boston.
That
The
is
only sport that I have been known to follow is hockey, and I root for the Red Wings. And I root for the Red Wings because when I was little, I went to a Red Wings game in Detroit, and I said that I thought hockey was pretty cool. And one of the men on the team said, well, if you want to, when you grow up, you can try out for the Red Wings too. Girls are allowed to. And that was it. Lifelong fan.
Stoner once again commented and said, for football, all I can say is roll tide roll. Yes, we know you're from Alabama,
I knew.
Stoner.
I was surprised that Roll Tide wasn't the first thing that someone said when we started this sports comparison here.
Okay,
Was the
well,
first thing I thought of.
obviously, the major theme of the podcast is safe, sane, and consensual. Simply because I honestly don't believe that the U.S. any longer has the consent of the governed. The governing bodies of the U.S. do not do things safely or sanely. They legislate while insane. But because of the phrase safe, sane, and consensual, now we must transition, no pun intended, into the second topic of the day, and that is BDSM and the dangers of breath play and the recent increase in uneducated choking. Now, Liz loves this topic because we have talked about it before, and she will go on rants, hours-long rants about it. So,
Okay,
do you want
maybe
to
not
start us out?
hours long, but if you've ever had somebody put their hands around your throat without you asking them to, you might be really fucking passionate about it too. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. You got to ask people before you put your hands around their throats. It's not okay to just choke women. Also, you can accidentally kill them, and you should know what the fuck you're doing first. I don't care if you saw it in a porno. Sorry.
I mean, we just got the verdict in the what's his name, Daniel Perry case.
Dominique, right? Hold
No,
on a second.
the one in New York.
Oh no, no,
That's
I totally
that's
I
Daniel
was thinking of
Penny.
the court case, the other one in France. Yeah, the Danny whatever his name is.
Danny
Yeah,
Penny.
and that case really shows that like choking is fucking dangerous, and people don't realize how quickly chokes become dangerous when they're unfamiliar with or they're untrained in how to choke people. It's really fucking easy to kill someone. It's just that's the danger in it. It's so easy and it takes so much skill not to kill someone with a choke that like unless you've been trained in it, you shouldn't be fucking doing it.
Well, there's an interesting thing about that, and I'll get into that in a second. But before I do, Naomi, would you like to join in, If not, just let me know.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So I was actually watching some YouTube videos this week, and there was a study that was brought up about people practicing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's actually been found that even if you do a correct blood choke, your risk of stroke or aneurysm in the future quadruples. So if you have ever been choked, you're 4 times more likely to suffer stroke or a brain aneurysm in the future. So for Marines like me and Haley, we are now 4 times more likely because of our experience with McMap.
I always knew McMap was gonna come back to bite me in the ass someday. I thought I avoided it after I got out, but
Yes, McMap is likely going to bite us in the ass, and I think it may have already bit me in the ass last year. So last November, when we were supposed to have a podcast, I had to cancel last minute because I started suffering a case of aphasia, which is most commonly attributed to a stroke. It may have been a mini stroke, it may have just been a migraine, but regardless, I'm now thinking it may have been a stroke. I didn't consider that option at the time.
holy shit, that's crazy. I'm glad you
This is
are doing okay now.
Yeah, well, it didn't impact any of my motor function. I didn't have words. I couldn't get any words out to make coherent sentences. It was frustrating, and it caused a lot of distress. But now knowing what I know, the question becomes, everyone who's ever been involved in BDSM, you can no longer have a safe breath play. It's not possible. We know it's not possible. It you may not kill someone in the moment, but you are in fact going to cause damage that will likely contribute to their death when it comes time.
getting off isn't worth doing that to another person or yourself. And I've been passionate about this subject for a number of years just because of how easy it is to go over the line. But knowing that as well, I just, I get that people learn how to have sex from watching pornography, and I also understand that when you've been watching porn for a while that you start to switch into different genres because the stuff that you started with doesn't do it as much anymore, and so you look for like stepmom stuck in dryers or whatever your perversity is. And I just think that there's a point that a lot of young men come across watching in porn women being suffocated or having their air restricted or being choked, and they think that's hot, and I'd really like them to consider that they're killing that woman. Maybe not in that
Yes.
moment, but, like, in the future. And, like, is that really sexy to you? Is women dying sexy? Because like, I don't think that people should, when you're having sex with each other, it should be an act of communication and something that you're doing together. It's not supposed to be a life-ending thing, and people should respect themselves and each other more than that.
I wholeheartedly agree.
But I think we've a lot of women, I think you'll find more than really talk about it, have experienced this issue, and I think we've inadvertently triggered quite a few of the women.
Yes, and I know she's not in here, but I want to apologize for Tori for not uh not properly briefing her on what was about to be talked about.
Yeah, I think in the future, maybe we do like not say trigger warning, but just explain the content first of what's going to be discussed and give them a minute to like mute themselves or hang up the headphones and offer to ping people.
Yes. Like we used to do with kids and news, especially, during US conflicts with other countries and they're televising battles. Uh this may not be
I
suitable for
forgot.
children.
We used to live in a little bit of a softer world and it's been like gradually being taken away. I don't understand what it is in certain people that hate seatbelts.
I
And
don't know.
it's a related thought, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like we know if you get in an accident and you have a seat buckle on, that you could be fine. And yet there are so many people who are like, fuck you, you won't make me wear a seat buckle. I don't like wearing the seat buckle in the golf cart, but also it doesn't go over 30 miles an hour. I think it goes like 24 miles an hour. So I'm not particularly scared. Like it's like falling off my bike.
Um okay, so the the question at this point becomes, if it's not safe, can it really be consensual? And I still have to say yes, but if you're going to do it, go in with both eyes open. Know that it can end your life at, you know, in the moment or years down the line, but it's going to cause damage and it will contribute.
So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with your perspective really quickly. Is it safe to use a gun when you're drunk?
No.
Okay. But when you're
Gen,
having sex,
generally speaking, it's not safe, but I can see certain scenarios where it's reasonable to use a firearm while you're drunk.
because there's a purpose to it.
Yes.
Okay. When you're having sex, like when you're in the throes of passion, that is as intense as being intoxicated. And people often accidentally tell people that they love them when they don't. And that's the worst thing they could have said and then regret it later, which is, something that you also do when you're drunk. You can see the similarities of the state of mind and the decreased inhibitions and lack of control. And I say, can you safely participate in this stuff at all? I know that people have gotten away with it and not harmed the other person to in their life before, but like, isn't that just dumb luck?
It can be. Um, I when we're talking specifically about this subject, not even just on air, but between people that are about to have any sort of intimate relations, this sort of discussion comes before any of that happens. It should always come before any of that happens, and consent needs to be given or withdrawn before it ever happens. Not specifically withdrawn, but consent should be given before it happens. Period. And it should always be assumed that it's not consented to if it hasn't been verbally consented to before anything occurs between the two people involved, or more than two people involved.
I guess I just come down. I don't participate in any kind of breath play, and I won't participate in knife play. I won't hurt other people. I don't care about the sexual aspect of it. I don't want to harm people. And like that's just kind of like where I've personally landed.
And that's perfectly reasonable. There's nothing wrong with saying I won't do this, point blank, period.
I will say again that you do have like you really do have to talk to people beforehand. I know that you touched on that, and I just you have to reiterate it, I guess, for some people. Like you cannot just start doing things in the middle of sex because it seems hot to you at the time without alerting the other person.
Yes. Which is why a pinky
There's
in the go ahead.
Hmm?
Oh, continue what you were gonna say. I could tell it was gonna be a funny one.
which is why a pinky in the booty hole gets so many men upset, because it wasn't asked about beforehand, and women just think, or some women have just thought, oh well, maybe he'll enjoy it because someone else said that their partner enjoyed it. Don't do it.
I don't think I have ever met a woman that did that accidentally. Although I have met women who said that they did it accidentally because the week before somebody had tried to do something else accidentally and didn't get the point when they said no.
I had an ex-wife that did it to me. I didn't like it.
Ooh. Oh, major L for her. That is wow. Okay, so ladies, have we all had a chat with each other and we know that people don't like things up their butt without being asked? Because I think that like our gender can come to terms with that even if the other one seems to struggle with it a little bit. Like
Yeah.
no things up the booty holes.
Well, and there's nothing technically wrong, but if that's an area that you're gonna play in, there needs to be some preparation. You can't just stick something up there and expect someone's gonna be fine with it.
Sorry, yeah, what I meant was no surprise things up the booty hole.
Yes.
Honestly, that yeah, it's all crazy. But it all goes back into consent. Consent in general, sex doesn't consent to every individual sexual act.
That's all right.
And I'm not
And you can
I'm not
always clarify. Like during the act, you can always clarify, and it doesn't have to be awkward. People seem to think asking for consent for things is awkward, but there are so many sexy ways to ask for consent, like in the moment while you're actively, doing whatever you're doing, that don't make it awkward, that actually increase the entire experience for both of you. It doesn't need to be weird.
Can I
there
just
there
say
was
that
there
it's
there
okay
was
to practice your lines, you guys. Like if you're having sex and you're like, I don't know how to ask how to do this in a sexy way right now, you're thinking that right now, then like fucking go to Chat GPT, pull it up and have a conversation with it about what would be sexy in that context because it's an AI and it probably won't judge you. Will Chat GPT let you talk dirty to it? I don't know.
I don't think so, and neither will Gemini.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Maybe if you phrase it like, will you help me workshop this? It will though.
You can scroll on like Reddit, and there are whole threads of people talking about different phrases to use and stuff. I mean, I got my go-to like 5 or 6 phrases. I know they work. They're my bread and butter. I'm like, I know this is gonna get the point across. It doesn't need to be complicated. You can use the same thing twice. Nobody's gonna like say you're plagiarizing or something.
When it comes to consent, there was a video about 8 years ago, when the anti-SJW movement really kicked off, 2016, 2017, and there was a video made about consent, and it was the most cringe video I've ever seen, in which the guy constantly asked for consent, and the woman hardly ever asked for consent to do the things that she wanted to do with the man. And I'm not saying you shouldn't ask or that you can't ask or that asking in and of itself is cringe, but a lot of things that happen during intimacy are not scripted and do not require words, but there are certain things that you must talk about it, whether it be in the moment or beforehand. A lot of intimacy is simply body language and, you know, communicating through the eyes and, you know, vocalizations. Doesn't have to be words, but I don't know where else I was going with that, but yeah, it doesn't always have to be in the moment. It doesn't always have to be beforehand, but it does always have to take place.
I think the major things that people should think about figuring out consent for either before or during the moment. Like I do think that conversations beforehand help, but you can have a conversation about what you're going to do without having a clinical discussion and like make it hot and figure out if they like oral sex or not. Some people don't like your germy mouth on their genitals. Uh and that's valid. Some
Yes.
people, best thing that's ever happened to them. It just everybody's a little bit different, and so you can talk about what's going to be hot or not, and like role play through the situation while you're still at the bar, and then get home and have a pretty good idea of what's going to be okay or not. And then if
Um
something new comes up, just be like, "Hey, do you like it when if I, you know?"
and because we're on the topic of BDSM using the safe, sane, and consensual, we also have to talk about fetish because that is part of kink. Unfortunately, the part of or the fetish that we're talking about isn't uh, what people generally consider fetish. It's Ray Blanchard and his categorization of all trans women in one of two fetishistic categories, and how he's the real fetishist. Which I think if Natalia wanted to jump back on, that would be a great place to jump on.
Oh, I just pinged her to make sure she knew too.
Okay. Um. So a small rundown. I know I've gone over this a couple times with a couple people, but Ray Blanchard is the man. Dr. Ray Blanchard is the man that developed the protocol in which most people in the world transition from male to female, and it was later adopted in reverse from female to male. And the way in which this protocol goes is you basically spend 2 years socializing as uh, the opposite gender, and then a therapist says you're ready or you're not ready, and they do or do not give you hormone replacement therapy. And then a couple more years go by, and then that therapist can sign off on surgeries and all of that. That was and still is pretty much the protocol throughout the entire world except for in the US. The US, in most states, has adopted the informed consent model, in which if you get the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, you don't need someone's uh, signature to say this person can start taking hormones. or this person can have the surgery. Yes, Liz. This is the guy that came up with AGP, but he also came up with HSTS, homosexual transsexual.
Okay, can I just
Sorry,
say?
I was reading his wiki page while you were talking.
Yes, Natalia.
Okay, AGP just reminds me of like accelerated graphic sport, and HSTS always sounds like high speed rail project. I'm sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine because you're not the only one that associates AGP with computers instead of trans people. Um, I I've said before, I trained in computers pretty much my entire childhood and my early adult years. That was my field of study throughout most of my life. Well, now half of my life. And I remember all of uh these different ports that no longer exist, like um AGP and IDE. Those no longer exist. You're never going to have a parallel ATA drive in a computer anymore. You're never going to have an AGP card in a computer anymore. It's all going to be PCIe period. Whether it's X16 or X32, that's a throw up. But so when it comes to Ray Blanchard, he came up. Liz is putting stuff in the chat about this.
Oh, you
in
don't
an,
have to read it. It's just
no,
Or-
it's absolutely fine. In an interview with Vice, Blanchard expressed the view that trans people should be considered as whatever their biological sex is, plus the fact that they are transsexual. Blanchard rejected the idea that treating gender dysphoria as a mental disorder contributes to stigma against the trans community, adding, I mean, how many people who make a joke about trannies consult the DSM first?
Can I please the slur? Come on.
If
I
he was in the room
apologize.
right now, I would pour my cup of water over his head for that entire thing. Like that is genuinely offensive.
Okay, like
Say
And that's not
something.
even trans. Sorry.
okay, I'm sorry.
Um,
He's not allowed to use that word. As a
The
slur,
the the
continue.
the
Naomi?
yeah,
oh
no,
yeah.
Naomi.
I was just gonna say that how he said that trans people should only be considered their assigned sex at birth, and then plus transsexuals. That's the opposite of how I think of myself. Like I place no value on my physical form, like, and it's all about my like internal experience of my identity.
Yeah, so when it comes to Blanchard, he's the one that created the model that most countries go off of when people are transitioning from male to female or from female to male. And the problem is this entire thing is based on the idea that you can either be gay or straight, but you cannot be bisexual. And anyone that did not fit into his AGP or HSTS model were not allowed to transition.
Yeah, also, what about like, asexual people as well? Like literally
Yeah,
anyone that isn't just gay or
a,
straight.
asexual people do not fit into his protocol at all. Um, and so Ray Blanchard saw trans people as completely fetishistic and put the gays in with HSTS and put the straights, quote unquote, in with the AGPs. So anyone transitioning to female that was attracted to women and only women, he would only put in AGP and people who were attracted to men, he would put in HSTS. And he did most of this with transvestites and transsexuals on the street corner. We're talking prostitutes. That's how he studied it.
All of it sounds like insane and transphobic. I'm sorry.
Sounds like
is
the data would be pretty
insanely
skewed.
transphobic.
The data
Okay,
is completely skewed.
How is it not transphobic to like do any of this? I don't know.
That's it. And this was a cisgendered straight dude, right?
Yeah,
I believe he's straight, yes.
I definitely think that there's a problem from people outside of communities researching communities, and I think this actually really demonstrates it. This is, as Erica said, a fetishization of transgender people masked as somebody studying them, but he's not studying them to learn about them. He's studying to tell the world who he thinks they are and not who they actually are. And the sickness in his thoughts comes through in how he speaks.
Honestly,
It seems to me like it comes from a place of like what I am is best, and anyone that doesn't want to be like what I am must be crazy in some way, or must be fucking wrong in some way, because why wouldn't they want to be just like me? That's almost how it reads to me.
It's
That's
pretty
like
on
I've got
point.
the impression that a lot of transphobic men are actually like really mad at trans women for what they see as like betraying their team and going over to the wrong side, like the lesser side. Like sometimes when I read their comments about like that's just kind of, I don't know. It's the
I think it all
hierarchy
comes.
of you've stepped out of place, so I have to put you back where you're supposed to be.
I mean,
That's
yeah, like the thing
exactly what I
is,
was. That's exactly
sorry.
what I was about to say.
I mean, what I like want to point out is that we live in a society where being a woman is almost seen as a curse. Like being a man is seen as a desirable, while being a woman is not. So they like automatically see us as some kind of mentally ill specimen because we, transition.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to the fact that they legitimately view women as inferior, so then it becomes, well, why would you willingly want to choose men when they're obviously inferior?
Continuing on with Ray, Dr. Blanchard, whatever anyone wants to call him. The problem is that he completely excluded any sort of bisexuality, which if you take a poll of trans women in the US right now, I can't say for sure, but I would venture a guess that the majority of us are bi. Not gay, not straight, bi.
And as a bisexual, let me just say that's the correct team.
Same. I think a
Yes,
lot more people in general are bi
All the coolest people
than
are
like,
bi, really.
as
yeah.
Tori said, or pansexual.
Or pan. No, the pansexual people are pretty cool too. I'm biased to the bi because I am one, but if I had to choose another sexuality, it'd be pan. And maybe I am pan and I just don't want to learn new people's terms.
I would venture a guess that you probably are.
What is pansexual again? Sorry.
Pan is bi, but includes people who are trans.
Oh, no, the trans homies are fine. I once went on a one night stand with a trans man and like he never came out to me and I just never addressed it. And in the morning, I got the distinct feeling that he thought that I was too drunk to have noticed during the evening. And then he never talked to me again, and I really wish I would have said something. Like, I am fine, like, because there's, like, definitely this feeling of, like, that he felt like he had done something that he shouldn't have when we woke up the next day.
Um, I'm sorry. I just zoned out for a second there.
No, well, I told you a hookup story, and you very correctly were like, "I don't need to hear the details of this."
That's not at all what was going on in my head. I just completely zoned about halfway through for no reason, and that's my ADHD setting in. Um, so he he completely excluded trans people who were, from his point of view, bisexual, because they didn't fit into his category, and they fit into either of his categories, but at the same time fit into both of his categories.
By the way, you have to love that every institution literally so transphobic that they still accept his research as legitimate.
Yes,
Yeah, he's just to be tossed out.
Yeah,
it
exactly. It's like exactly. It's not like anything good.
it's
There's
what
no way you could be this biased and create good research.
it's what gender criticals and turfs rely on in order to form their opinions, which just rolls right back to the first topic of tonight, or of today, and that's cult thought. He
And
people
ironically, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and ironically, it goes back to like things being connected as well, because I think a lot of like citing bunk research in general comes from an uneducated population not understanding how science progresses and how to truly understand, like, and truly like read and analyze critically scientific research.
Um, when it comes down to it, I am not anti-science, but I am very critical of anything, any new science that comes out. If there is a study, I'm not just going to say, okay, the study is perfect and is, uh, you know, the the study is completely accurate and we should rely on it. I'm not one of the trust the science dude bros or chicks or whatever. I am going to look into the methodology used to study whatever it is that that person studied, and if I find flaws with it, I'm going to toss it aside.
Yeah, I'm saying I think a lot of people just don't even have the basis to even do those steps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they're not scientifically literate enough to even look at research and say, oh, well, the methodology is fucked up here and it's gonna show you bias if you do it this way. Like, I think a lot of people just don't even have the ability to even question research in that way.
Um, but this this all just rolls right back to last week's discussion too. Um, where we were talking about GCs and their willingness to only selectively enforce my body, my choice. And that's become the cult, the basic cult throughout the entire US, and it doesn't just have to be men, doesn't just have to be grapers or GCs. Everyone has a my body, my choice opinion, but it doesn't encompass everyone. It only encompasses those that agree with me.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times that people have like felt like my decision to transition is something that they should have some control over.
I really struggle to understand the like what's on me is mine and what's on you is yours. And I guess I know that people reach over into other people's lives in a way that makes no sense to me, but it's legitimately confusing to me how people manage to make other um people transitioning their business really and it feels like they go through extravagant steps to find a way that it's their business. Like, what if someday I have to share a bathroom with a trans woman and I'm uncomfortable when the person lives out in the middle of nowhere where there are no trans people and it's probably never going to happen, but it consumes like all of their brain.
Based on a complete like theoretical situation too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying to say that, like, because I'm a city girl and like there's been trans people around since I moved into cities, and you see them in the bathroom and you say, "Hi, how are you doing?" And they say, "Good." And you say, "Well, have a good day." And you walk out like with every other person you accidentally make eye contact with in the bathroom. And it's not that big of a deal. And these people who live in places where they'll never meet trans people just get so hung up on an experience they're not likely to have.
I actually have argued with my coworkers recently over that exact thing. And it reminds me of something I sent to one of the chats where it's like um in an ideal world, like when we're talking about like, oh, bathroom situation or whatever, and people will come at me and say, "Oh, well, would you be okay like sharing a bathroom with a trans woman?" And I'm like, "I think you're misunderstanding me. In an ideal world for me, we wouldn't have to have segregated bathrooms at all because everyone would fucking behave regardless of who we're mixing with in the bathrooms. Like I go into the bathroom, I go in a stall and I walk out. Like, I don't need to worry about anyone else being in the bathroom with me as long as everyone's behaving themselves. Like I don't care. It's so irrelevant at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, and I've experienced this firsthand. Um, I can't I can't use a restroom while I'm at work. I cannot. There's one restroom that I can use about a third of the way through my day, and that's at my drop off in Illinois. Otherwise, I can't hit any of the truck stops for bathrooms. The last time I tried was at a Love's in Illinois, and I tried going into the men's room, and the ladies at the desk told me, no, you can't use the men's room, you have to use the ladies' room. So I went to the ladies' room, and right as I was opening the ladies' room door, the men's room door opened, and the guy coming out saw me and threatened me, uh, carrying a concealed weapon, saying, if you go in there, I'm going to kill you. So I, I can't get anywhere safely. And if any truckers ever listen to this, a lot of them are going to think, well, why don't you use one of the showers? Because I'm a day cab driver. I don't have the money to pay $18 for a shower room just to take a 2-minute bathroom break. That's a waste of money.
I personally don't have to worry about that because I like don't leave the house at all. So I just use my bathroom at home.
If I could work from home, I would, but trucks do not drive themselves, and regardless of what Elon thinks he can do, You're never going to make a truck, an electronic self-driving truck, work in the US. It's not going to happen.
You
One thing,
know, there are sometimes, I don't know if there's any where you are, little outhouse type bathrooms around where I am. And it would be really cool if there was like a map of bathrooms that were safe. You know, like those unisex bathrooms that completely shut shouldn't be a problem, right? And like
Yeah.
just like if we had a map of where they were so that people like you could safely go to the bathroom, because like I can't fix that trucker, but like maybe there's a way to spread the information to you.
Well, if I go to Wisconsin, there are 18 bathrooms that I can stop at, in which there are unisex bathrooms that I can use. But there are none on the way to Illinois.
It's funny too because I feel like the bathroom thing is discussed a lot in America. I think in part because of the way our bathrooms are designed too. Because when I was over in Japan, out in public, if you go into a public bathroom, it's not just these, you know, flimsy plastic stalls that have gaping holes in them either.
Mm-hmm.
They're like you go into the public bathroom and it's set up like the bathrooms over here with individual stalls, but each individual stall has a full-on wall and that goes all the way to the ground, that goes all the way to the ceiling, like they're their own cubicles. And that's just the normal bathrooms that they have over there. And if America could swing their bathrooms to there, I would like, there's no reason for us to be worried about anyone who's in the bathroom with us because you're getting your own basically unisex regardless.
Yeah, well, most truck stops have bathrooms designed like that. They're completely walled off, or each stall is completely walled off, and the door is from top to bottom completely sealed. You can't see who's next to you. You don't even know if there's anyone next to you. Uh, the problem, the argument that I'm always seeing, especially on Twitter, is, well, we don't want these guys in our bathrooms, uh uh you know doing the nasty. We don't want them, doing things that no one should be doing in a bathroom. Listen, if they were doing that in the women's bathroom, they were doing that in the men's bathroom too. They're just disgusting people.
Word. And
Most
also, it's really not fair to define a minority group by individuals and not see them as a whole. When we do that to Black people, people recognize that racism usually when you point it out, at least in my experience. And I find with this issue of the bathrooms and being like, all transgender people shouldn't get to pee, because I've been sent these stories on Twitters. They'll have like the 15 million stories about the one person that acts up, in written different ways. And then they
uh-huh.
send it to you in a thread and they're like, and this is why it's bad. And like, but okay, but that's like one person. That's not like, you are taking individuals and you're extrapolating them to the group, and that's faulty logic. I don't know. I find it really incredibly difficult to talk to those people.
I
honestly,
No, go ahead, Natalia.
honestly feel like it's also just the media portrayal, right? Because it wouldn't be such a discussion if it wasn't for media, which is also transphobic, I should mention.
No, girl, you are so right, because it does feel like whenever the news has the opportunity to find a trans person that isn't passing and looks like what people imagine a stereotype will look like, they're like, hell yeah, let's put this person right on the news. Meanwhile, people like my girl Paige, who like nobody could clock, don't seem to make it on the news as just regular people that you run into. It's only the ones that they think will be the scary caricatures
Yeah.
of the population. It's very offensive.
Yeah,
Again.
but I mean, like, that's generally just media is just very transphobic. Which I always say this, but like, media portrayal is one of the reasons societal transphobia is so large, if you ask me, because most people are not going to actually interact with a trans person on a personal level.
I think the
Yeah, I
media,
think.
I mean, we know. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that I've heard that the statistic for like trans people in the population is like 1%. So like we're not that common.
No,
It
you
all
aren't that common, and you would think from the way that TERFs talk about you that you're 100% of the women's issues in this country that's currently having some major women's issues.
it all goes into like the media is owned by rich people, and the rich people need to keep us infighting so that we don't turn towards them. And they need a scapegoat, so they focus on tiny minority groups of the population and so oversaturate the media with topics relating to them so that people's attention is there rather than other places.
You know, it it comes to mind the fact that, you know, most of these people would rather we be dead. Um, I mean, you look at Elon, and he definitely wants his daughter dead. He would rather have a dead son than a living daughter.
I actually heard something interesting about Elon and his relationship with his daughter. I have no basis for whether or not this is fact, but I did hear that Elon, like, because he has like a billion kids or something.
Yeah, he's got a lot of kids.
Guess he, yeah, and I guess he, in the process of conceiving these kids, he chose the sperm to actually inseminate the egg, and he only had one daughter, one cisgender daughter with Grimes because she wanted one, but all of his other kids he chose to be boys. He chose a Y chromosome sperm for them. So now he's really pissed because his trans daughter is basically like spitting in the face of his decision. I don't know how true that is, but knowing
I
what I know about Elon.
I don't
That
think that's particularly true, because the Y chromosome does not develop until uh after the androgen bath during like the first 6 to 12 weeks of pregnancy. But before the androgen bath during pregnancy, everyone starts out as female.
Hold on a second. So, for this story to be true, it would have to be in vitro fertilization and removal of the girl fetuses. This sounds made up, but I hate Elon, so I'm not gonna fight about it too
Don't
much.
we all?
yeah, exactly have
Um,
to be committed Elon haters.
I had a post when he bought Twitter detailing exactly how I thought the platform would deteriorate, and it matched up very well to what actually happened. And that's how fucking predictable it was. I'm not a genius.
listen, I don't think that it has gone full right wing. Uh, because the simple fact of the matter is, I've got a lot of 2A homies that are extremely right wing, that they get fucking booted all the time. One of my Marine buddies down in Missouri, Renegade,
Mm-hmm.
he's constantly getting suspended from Twitter, and the only thing is that he posts is shit talking between him and other service members, and him posting shit about guns.
So I see the
if
problem. He's not in Elon's cult.
yeah, anyone that's not in Elon's cult or is not making money for Elon in some way, shape, or form, we don't get
Is it the bot?
preferential treatment.
I'm not joking. Like most of Twitter is bots. I'm pretty sure. So like 75%.
It's highly likely.
In
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I
in
mean, no,
another
I'm pretty sure it is true. That's the thing.
in another community I'm a part of, they have a, if you'll excuse the offensive phrasing of this, a phrase, scaring the hose. And it's something that they apply to behavior that scares women away. And I think that Twitter is going to become quite the sausage fest, as it were, because most women don't like to hang around problematic men. And the more that the people who aren't treating women nicely are like if you're a man on Twitter and you defend a woman, like you get like 15 guys attacking you now too. So they're driving away the kind of guys that are like worth it for women to talk to, and they're leaving the kind of guys that harass women. So even if women are right wing, eventually they're going to be like, well, I might be right wing, but this is a shithole, and also start to leave too. Um, and I think that maybe there is further down for Twitter to go, but there's kind of a point where it's going to be mostly just a group of men that behave poorly and men that don't care if other men behave poorly talking to each other, at which point they'll probably start having more infighting because they need their victims around to really to form a oh, is it, have we already reached that stage? Listen, I went over to Blue Sky like right after the election. I was reading some dude talk about how they should legalize rape next, and I was like, you know what? If this site was moderated, this hate speech against women wouldn't be allowed, and I left the website.
Who could have foreseen allowing men to behave terribly with no consequences would drive women away?
Right?
Crazy.
Who'd have
And
thought?
they
I always
have what?
I always say that Twitter is just going to be 4chan with accounts.
No. That was on, to be clear, the conversation about rape was on Twitter, and then I never like I went to Blue Sky. I commented today on Twitter for the first time since the election because some idiot said that men were more important because if there was 1,000 women on an island and one man, he could repopulate the earth, but not if it was reversed. And I pointed out that the women could all get pregnant and drive him out to sea and then start a society over again without patriarchal influence. So maybe that's not a good plan.
Yeah.
That's just a demonstration of the sexual irrelevance of men. That just
really
means we
does.
do not need many of you in order to maintain the population. That is the exact opposite of the argument that any sane person would try and make as far as men are concerned.
100%, because like they're like I think that he thinks that he could take on a woman, he could take on like 1,000 women, and like, sir, no, they'll all surround you. And then have you ever seen She Wolves of the Apocalypse?
No.
I think it has another name. Okay. I have a thing for women with shotguns, okay? And I don't know if you know that about me. So I have a particular interest in post-apocalyptic fiction, which sometimes features the plot of there being only women and then one guy left to reproduce with and how women will behave. And if spoiler alert, it's not by making him king and letting him rule them. They like keep control of his sperm and like keep him locked away. And then some other women have to like break him free. Like they don't just go, "Ooh, it's a man. We should all suck his dick." Like they like enslave him.
They actually they actually played that a similar scenario to that on Sliders back in the 90s.
Oh, did they? Sliders was a great show.
Yes. So during a world war, one of the countries involved released a virus that basically killed off like 2/3 of the male population, and so all of these countries put all the men in these breeder spas, and it was a fucking insane episode, but it's an accurate portrayal of what would happen.
Yeah, like humans just like we're not when it comes to rare resources, we're not good. Like if everybody has enough for everybody, we tend to be a very peaceful species, and then when we're not getting what we need, like we take what there is left and we hoard it away and we try to protect it. And so I don't know, like I just don't know what they think that one dude is going to do with 1,000 women besides, belong to them.
Okay, with that, we are now at our 2-hour limit. Excuse me. So we are going to go ahead and do our outros. Go ahead and start with Naomi. Please say goodbye.
Bye.
And of course, then we have Natalia. Please say goodbye, Natalia.
Goodbye, everyone. Good night or good evening or whatever time it is for everyone.
And then Haley.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And then, of course, we have Liz. Please say goodbye, Liz.
Goodbye. I had a great time as always, and I enjoy yapping with you all.
And that is going to be the end of the show. As always, I'm going to leave everyone with the music. And we will see everyone next week.